Hi folks, and welcome to the Is It Worth It for the Excelsior, the Tier 5 British Premium Heavy Tank. This tank is available from the tech tree for 1500 gold, or it's available from the gift shop. And it's another one of these tanks that goes on sale a couple of times a year. So, the question we're going to be asking today is this tank worth 1500 gold, or less if you decide to pick it up in a special? And as per usual, we're going to start with the history of the tank, and the history of the Excelsior ties in a lot to what I've been talking about in some previous reviews. The Excelsior was built as a successor to the Churchill, because around 1942 the Churchill wasn't performing very well. It was rushed into mass production. I covered that during the Churchill 3 review. So the British wanted a replacement. They were looking for other alternatives. One of the other alternatives was the T-14, which I covered in the T-14 review. It was a joint operation between the British and the Americans to design a successor to the Churchill. And it reached prototype stage, and the Churchill ended up being saved because the Churchill 3 was performing very, very well. And again, I covered that during the Churchill 3 review. But another one of the tanks, in addition to the T-14, that was developed to replace the Churchill when the British were thinking about scrapping the line, was the Excelsior, or its project name A33. Now, the A33, or the Excelsior, was a prototype. Only two were ever built, and in fact, the prototypes performed very, very well. And it was very, very close to becoming a standard production model and a replacement for the Churchill. But the Churchill 3 started performing, did very, very well in North Africa, as covered in that review, and as a result, the British decided to keep the Churchill line of tanks, and the Excelsior ended up being scrapped, even though it was performing very, very well in tests. Now, it was a prototype, only two were ever built, and the two Excelsiors that were built, the two A33s that were built, were actually not the same tank. It's a heavy tank that's built around a Cromwell chassis. The first A33 that was built was a more heavily armoured Cromwell chassis, and it was using the M6, the American M6 suspension. The second Excelsior that was built, the second A33, was this one, the one that ended up in game, which is using the standard Cromwell suspension, but it was extended out to the sides of the tank and the track base became a lot wider. So it's basically a heavily armoured Cromwell. And this version of the tank still exists today. This is the A33, or the Excelsior, that's currently in Bovington Tank Museum. So it never saw combat, it was just a prototype, but it came very, very close to being a production tank for the British. So as per usual, I'm going to be comparing the Excelsior against all its Tier 5 premium heavy rivals, and that means it's going up against the T-14 for the Americans and the Churchill 3 and KV-220 for the Russians. Taking a look at the hit points, the Excelsior comes in at 670 hit points, which is a little bit on the low side compared to the other premium tanks. The T-14 and the KV-220 both get 690 hit points, and the Churchill 3 gets 700. But putting it into context as a Tier 5 heavy tank, for example, the KV-1 only gets 590 hit points, so the Excelsior having 670 hit points is actually quite good, although compared to the other premium tanks, it's on the low side. It weighs 41.5 tons for me, which basically makes it one of the lighter heavy tanks. The T-14 and the KV-220 are significantly heavier, and the Churchill 3 is slightly lighter. But the Excelsior does get a decent engine. It's not the best engine, it may be less powerful than the T-14 and the KV-220, but because it's pushing a relatively light heavy tank, the tank does accelerate quite well. I don't think it accelerates quite as well as the T-14 does, but it definitely outperforms the Churchill 3 and the KV-220. So yeah, the acceleration isn't bad on the tank, and the top speed is actually very, very good at 38.6 kilometers an hour. It makes it the fastest of all the Tier 5 premium heavy tanks, significantly faster than the Churchill 3, the other British Tier 5 heavy tank, and the T-14, which can accelerate up to 34 kilometers an hour very easily. It takes the Excelsior a little bit longer to reach 38, but it's definitely faster than the KV220, both in acceleration and in top speed. The traverse speed on the tank is very, very good at 32 degrees per second, significantly faster than any of the other Tier 5 premium heavies. The turret traverse speed is 36 degrees per second, significantly better than the T14 or the KV220. It's very, very similar to the Churchill 3s, but when you combine 36 degrees per second turret traverse with 32 degrees hull traverse, this tank, it turns very, very well. It can track targets, it maneuvers very well, and it can keep its gun on target. This tank really does play a lot more like a heavy medium tank than it does a heavy tank. The view range is very good at 350, which beats the T14 and the KV220. It matches the Churchill 3. So the view range for a heavy tank is actually very, very good, and the signal range is comparable to the T14 and Churchill 3. Only the KV220s is worse. So overall stats so far, it's a pretty good looking tank, and when we take a look at the armor, it starts to look even better because it has 114 millimeters of frontal armor on the hull, which is actually even more than the KV220. And as we covered in the Churchill 3 review, 176 millimeters of frontal armor on the front of the Churchill 3 is a complete and utter myth. Don't believe it. That's closer to about 80 millimeters. So 114 millimeters on paper is very, very good. It's also got 114 millimeters of frontal turret armor, again, which is very, very good. In fact, it's got the best frontal armor of any of these tanks. However, there are some negatives, and its side armor on paper is only 31 millimeters thick, and the rear armor is very, very good as well. So it's got decent front armor, decent rear armor, but the side armor isn't very good on paper. The turret all round is very good. As I say, it's got 114 millimeters on front, 92 on the sides, and 92 on the rear. So I think it's probably one of the best turrets. The T14 has a very, very good turret, but I think the Excelsior is very, very close when it comes to turret armor. So popping into Tank Viewer, you'll see that the armor values on paper are actually pretty accurate, unlike the Churchill 3, which lies regarding its 176 millimeters of frontal armor. The Excelsior has 114 millimeters of frontal armor. So you could see that basically the entire front of the tank is mainly 114 millimeters thick. Now it is flat. It is very, very flat armor, but it is 114 millimeters thick. And that means that a lot of lower tier tanks are going to have severe problems penning an Excelsior from the front. We take a look at 108, and that refers to the rear of the tank. Again, a very, very strong rear, and again, a lot of lower tier tanks are going to have problems penning it, even though it is flat. 92 millimeters refers to the turret, the sides and rear, and again, very, very good armor. There is a little bit of angling going on here at the sides, so the turret is quite good all the way around, and the commander's hatch on top is also 92 millimeters thick. So the armor is looking very, very good. When we come to 63, that refers to a small section at the base, the rear of the tank. Again, not a lot of people know to shoot here, but most people would probably try to pen you here. But it is a weak spot if you're in a lower tier tank shooting at an Excelsior. 54 millimeters refers to the upper front plate, which is very, very well sloped. So even though it's 54 millimeters thick, it's the weakest frontal armor on the tank, but look at the angle on this. Unless you're shooting directly down on this, there's a very, very good chance you will bounce lower tier tanks. And the lower glacis is also very, very well angled, very, very well sloped. And again, you'll find yourself bouncing a lot of shots from your lower glacis if people can actually hit it. It's very, very small. 38.1 millimeters refers to a small strip of weak armor at the back. Again, if you're in a low tier tank, I know it's going to be very difficult to hit this, but it is a weak spot. If you can get directly behind an Excelsior, just start pumping shots into this strip at the back, and you should easily be able to pen it. But the rear armor is very good. The frontal armor is very good. 31.75 refers to the side of the tank. Now, this is the weakest armor on the tank, and this is the where you really want to be shooting an Excelsior. It does have spaced armor. I'll get into the spaced armor in a moment, but basically the side is where you want to hit. If you're in a lower tier tank with a lower caliber weapon, this is where you want to be shooting, directly in the side. It's only 31.75 millimeters thick. 30 millimeters of thickness refers to the gun, which you can pretty much ignore, and then the top of the tank, the turret, top of the turret is 25.4 millimeters thick. Now, it is worth noting that RT should be shooting or should be focusing on Excelsiors because it has 0 armor on the engine deck and this area around the turret. If you're shooting down on an Excelsior, you've got 0 armor directly on the engine deck and just in front of the turret. If you're in a tall tank or if you're on a slope shooting down at an Excelsior, you should have absolutely no problems penning here. Even if you're behind the Excelsior and you can get any sort of shot here, basically it's going to pen. It's not going to ricochet, it is going to pen. This is considered 0 armor. So the Excelsior does have weak spots, but a lot of players don't know those weak spots, and this thing can be an absolute monster. We'll take a look at the spaced armor now, and yeah, apparently this thing has 152 millimeters of spaced armor somewhere and 139 millimeters of spaced armor somewhere, but I can't find them. I've searched and searched and searched, tried to do a little bit of research, can't find what these spaced armor values refer to at all. Maybe it's just these viewports, I have no idea. But we'll take a look at, let's go back to hide spaced armor. You'll notice that this tank doesn't have a gun mantlet. The front of the turret may be very well armored at 114, but this area around the gun is just like the Cromwell. It doesn't have a gun mantlet, and this is 0 millimeters thick. However, it is covered by 114 millimeters of spaced armor. There is a strip of spaced armor to either side of the gun mantlet as well, or the gun front of the turret as well. Keep on saying the gun mantlet, but it doesn't have one. But yeah. So they're like the front of the entire turret. This is 114 millimeters thick. It is covering 0 armor, but if you've got a gun that does more penetration than 114 millimeters, this is where you want to shoot the Excelsior if you're facing it frontally, because shots in here are going to take out the gun and they're going to take out the gunner. In this example on Fisherman's Bay, I've done a little bit of damage, picked up a couple of kills, but I've had to come back to deal with a T-25 that was flanking us. So I'm coming around at an angle, put a shot into his front wheel, he bounces, I'm coming around at an angle, track him, miss another track shot, and he's bounced again. So there's my 91 millimeters of penetration bouncing. He switched to gold, and as you notice, my gun is damaged and my gunner is dead. So we take him out, and as you can see here, a shot just to the left of that spaced armor, but shots in here are going to take out the gun, they're going to take out the gunner, and that happened to me more than once. When it comes to side armor, there's good and there's bad news. Yes, this tank only has 31 millimeters of side armor. However, it does have spaced armor. Let's put this back on. There we go. It has side skirtings. That side skirting is 25.4 millimeters thick and it's spaced armor. So anything shooting at the side of this tank needs to penetrate 25 millimeters of spaced armor, may have to penetrate the tracks before reaching the 31 millimeters of side armor, and that effectively is 60 millimeters. So anything shooting directly at the side needs to penetrate 2 layers before reaching the hull, and it basically means 60 millimeters of penetration is needed. So again, the side armor, even though on paper is not very good, is very effective against lower tier tanks. Now again, there are some weak spots. As I say, the side is only 31 millimeters thick, so if an Excelsior decides to angle against you, you can see that he's exposing this narrow strip here just on the corner. That's only 31 millimeters thick, so lower tier tanks can pen an Excelsior from the side if they know what they're doing, but it's quite a small target, it's quite difficult to hit. What might be easier for lower tier tanks is the track design. Bear in mind, A lot of British tanks have a lot of drive wheels, but the Excelsior doesn't. You can see here that this is all empty space. So the drive wheels are down here, and there's empty space above the tracks where you only have 21 or 25 millimeters of spaced armor to go through before reaching the hull. You don't actually have to penetrate the tracks. I think I'll demonstrate that maybe a little bit better if we go to undamaged. Yeah, there we go. So basically, if we look at the track design, you've got your wheels down here, and you've got zero, nothing in here. So basically, shooting at the side of this tank means that you can avoid hitting tracks completely. All you have to do is penetrate 25.4 millimeters of spaced armor if you're aiming at this area here. So effectively, most of the time, players are able to take me out in an Excelsior. It's by shooting me in the sides. So even though on paper the side armor is better than it would have you believe in the garage, I still think the side armor is definitely the weakest point of this vehicle. So overall, the Excelsior is a fast, maneuverable heavy tank. It's got very, very good frontal armor, very, very good rear armor, very, very good turret armor, and the weakest armor on the tank is its sides, and even that armor is better than it is on paper and can be surprisingly troll. It's got decent view range, it's got decent signal range, and yeah, I think it's a pretty good package so far. So what about the gun? The Excelsior gets a 75mm gun, and its stats kinda look very, very familiar, but I like to put things into context, so let's take a look at the T14, and this is why the gun looks very, very familiar. You see, the T14 and the Excelsior were both built for the same reason, to replace the Churchill. They both come with 75mm, and they're very, very similar guns. You can see that the Excelsior gets a slightly quicker rate of fire, but not by much, and definitely not noticeable. And as I showed in the T14 review, the gun on the T14 is not great, but it's usable, it's workable. It only has 1mm more penetration than the gun on the Excelsior has. It's got the same alpha damage. First major difference is the premium ammo. The premium ammo on the T14 is 127mm, and the premium ammo on the Excelsior is 144, so it gets almost 20mm more penetration with its premium ammo. The premium ammo on the Excelsior is definitely a lot better. However, the gun on the Excelsior is far, far more accurate than the gun on the T14 is, but the aim time's a little bit worse. So essentially, it's a better version of the gun on the T14, but not by much. Again, keeping things in context, let's take a look at the gun on the KV-220. The gun on the KV-220, again, the KV-220, not known for its gun, but it's a workable gun. And you can see again, although it's not a 75mm, it is a 76mm, the rate of fire is slower. The penetration on its standard AP is a little bit better by a whole 8mm. And again, the premium ammo is only 121mm, whereas the Excelsior gets 144. So again, over 20mm better penetration with its premium ammo. It's got exactly the same alpha damage, and again, the gun on the Excelsior is more accurate and has exactly the same aim time. So compared to the other guns on the KV-220 and the T14, I think the gun on the Excelsior is actually quite good. Another thing you'll see when you read about the Excelsior is the fact that people say the gun is not great at firing on the move. I've seen that repeated in multiple places, and I'll just say that I haven't found that. I've found that the gun is actually quite accurate when firing on the move. Yeah, it's very, very inaccurate if you're firing on the move at targets more than 100, 200 meters away, but the Excelsior is a bully. It likes to be up close and personal, and shooting on the move at close range, I think the gun is actually quite good. Again, speaking about the gun, it's got a nice rate of fire. It's got nice DPM. I forgot to mention the DPM on the tank. Again, people will say that the gun is very, very average, or maybe even below average on the Excelsior, but the Excelsior gets special matchmaking. It will not see tier 7s. It only sees tier 5s. It only sees tier 6s. sixes, and in most situations the penetration on the standard AP, and if you need it in a bind, the premium ammo is just fine. The DPM comes in at around 1750, which again, there were a lot of tier 5 premium medium tanks with more DPM, but as far as the heavies go, it's actually got very good DPM. It's got better DPM than, for example, the final gun on a KV-1, or much more DPM than the final gun on a Churchill. So the DPM on the gun is very good, and you get a lot of ammunition, so you don't run out of ammunition in this tank. It's reasonably fast firing, and you've got plenty of ammo. Really, there's very little I can complain about regarding the gun on this tank, but it does have problems now and again. The gun on the Excelsior is very reliant on the matchmaker. As you can see, I'm here on Kamar, and just from this clip, using my standard AP, 91mm of penetration, and I bounce one shot on the VK3601H. Now, I'm old-fashioned. I keep on forgetting the VK3601H is a heavy tank now. I'm going for his traditional weak lower glacis, but I've forgotten that his lower glacis is now 100mm thick. So my standard AP can't go through him. I have to switch to premium. I'm just putting shots in. Get another shot in. Now, I've already bounced the VK, but then a KV-85 comes around the corner. Miss a track shot. Going for his lower glacis, but I'm firing premium ammo here. Going to go for a track shot. Take him out. I'm angled, but he manages to pen me. I'm about to kill the KV-85, and then the VK comes around the corner. I'm angled. I bounce the VK. I bounce the KV-85 again, take out the KV-85, but I've had to use premium ammo. I've fired 12 premium shots so far. So I move up, take out the VK3601H. Unfortunately, he managed to get another shot in, but I was very unlucky. I ran into two tanks, I needed to switch to premium ammo, and as I say, my fault. I kind of always forget every time I see a VK3601H that it's a heavy tank now, and that the lower glacis is no longer a weak spot. But when you're in an Excelsior, you've really got to keep an eye on the matchmaker, and you've got to keep an eye on whether or not you're going to be able to pen the enemy tanks. Sometimes you've got no choice but to fire premium ammo, and that turns out to be quite expensive. So how good the gun is really down to the matchmaker. It depends on whether or not you get it into a tier 5 game or a tier 6 game. It depends on whether or not there's going to be a lot of heavily armored tier 6s on the enemy team or a lot of heavily armored tier 5s on the enemy team. In some cases the gun is fine, you don't have to fire any premium at all, but in other cases, depending on the matchmaker, you will end up having to fire some premium. As a result of occasionally having to fire quite a bit of APCR depending on the matchmaker, it's not a fantastic money maker. It's okay, but it's not fantastic. As you can see, the premium ammo is 2,800 credits per shot, and when you consider you're only doing 110 average damage with that, it adds up. It's very expensive, and you will end up making a loss if you have to fire a lot of premium ammo in a game. And while still on the subject of the gun, let's talk about the Excelsior's gun depression, which on paper is an amazing 13 degrees of gun depression. However, that's not the whole story. 13 degrees of gun depression only refers to the gun depression over the sides of the tank. Like a lot of German tanks, the gun depression over the side of the tank is actually better than it is over the front or the rear. So it does get 13 degrees of gun depression over the sides, but it means you've got to expose your weakest armor in order to make use of that gun depression. Over the front of the tank, I don't have the exact figures, but it feels to me when I'm playing the tank as if it's more like 7 degrees or maybe even 8 degrees of gun depression over the front, and over the rear of the tank it's more like 5 degrees. So it does have 13 degrees of gun depression, but only over the sides. So yes, this tank can be used as a hill warrior, but it's not a great hill warrior because it has no gun mantlet. And even though the turret armor is very good, basically anything that can pen you with 114 millimeters or more is going to pen you, even if you're trying to go hull down, even if you're trying to use this thing as a hill warrior. Okay guys, you've seen a clip of the gun at its absolute worst when it's up against tier 6 heavies. So let's see an example of the tank, the engine, the gun at its best. This is an all tier 5 game on Sand River. You can see that my acceleration is okay. I am crossing sand, I am going uphill. But yeah, the engine really doesn't accelerate as well as it does on the T14, but it's not bad. Sometimes you can struggle to reach your 38 kilometers an hour, but we've done it with a little bit of help from downhill momentum. So I'm just advancing, and you're gonna see that this tank definitely does not have 13 degrees of gun depression over the front. I get a nice shot into the PZ4H, and I get a second shot in. So you see the rate of fire is very, very good. But this is a game where there are 3 enemy RT in play, and a lot of very, very dangerous TDs. TDs that have absolutely no problems penning my 114 millimeters of frontal armor. So again, I'm going to move up. I'm going to use my gun depression. You see I'm struggling to get my gun down. Over the front of the tank, this is definitely not 13 degrees. So again, moving up, see a T-82 in the distance. Fire before being fully aimed. There's the accuracy. Shot goes slightly high, but we do a little bit more damage. And now I know that there's a PZ SFL 4C sitting in the usual TD camping spots on the ridge. They took out our T1 Heavy. I don't have 6th Sense. As I say, I'm training up a brand new Carnarvon crew. So they're at 100%, but no 6th Sense, no major skills yet. And I'm just being patient. So we've got tanks moving down the 0 line. I was waiting for the spots. Move forward. RT is spotted. Get a nice shot into the priest. Aim carefully. And I have no idea what that shot hit. I seem to have missed him. So here we go. An angled Churchill. Standard AP. Side of the tank. And I just can't pen this guy. And as a result, I take a hit from the PZSFL 4C, and I've just lost a third of my hit points. So where did that shot pen me, actually? I can't actually see where the PZ4... Oh, just on the corner of my upper front plate. But yeah, I've decided I'm going to relocate. There's absolutely no point in dealing with all those TDs camping on the ridge. I'm relocating because our cappers are under pressure from a T1 Heavy. There's also a T-34 down here. He's the best player on the enemy team. And you can see how easily I'm able to relocate. I was doing 38 kilometers most of the way here.
That one didn't go through.
And unfortunately hit the T1 Heavy's turret. That shot goes high. Sometimes the accuracy lets you down, sometimes it doesn't. So, T1 Heavy, he's on 1 hit point, and we nick the kill. So hooray, my first kill of the game. It was for 1 hit point on the T1 Heavy. I'm not greedy, I'll take anything. So best player on the enemy team, T-34. Don't think this KV-1 realizes how annoying he is by constantly advancing and moving back and forward, but he's just gotten hit by RT. So really I haven't done anything, but if you look at the minimap, we've got a PC-1C capping. And that means if the enemy team are going to stop the cap, they have to pass by me. So I've advanced, there's my view range, I've spotted the Stug, he's coming to stop the cap. And the first shot goes high, Second shot goes in. Next shot goes in. And that PCSFL4C has relocated. He's sitting at the back of the map now. So now I'm down to a third hit points. I can't afford to take another hit. So I go for a blind shot in the Stug, and it hits. But you see, most of my shots on the Stug have actually gone in. And when you let the gun aim fully, you time your shots, the gun can behave. Against tier 5s, I haven't fired any premium. I don't fire any premium in this game. Against tier 5s, the gun is just fine, even though people complain about it. So I know that the PCSFL4C has probably spotted me. I've just dodged RT again, but now the PCSFL is going to try and stop cap, and now I'm going to have side shots again. So again, no sixth sense, I'm shooting past this tree, don't know if I've been spotted. And I guess I have. But I've almost killed this guy. There we go. Revenge. And you can see that the enemy RT, the AMX-105AM, hit me for 67 hit points because he hit the space armor on the side of my tank. That would have been a different story had he hit my engine deck, but he hit the space armor on the side of my tank. So I advance. Unfortunately, we've got a Matilda Black Prince who is an AFK bot. Our PZ1C is capping, so I'm just going to speed it up because I sit here for about 30 seconds before something happens. So I know the enemy team need to advance to stop the cap. There's the M7 Priest, aiming fully, time the shot, take him out for kill number 4. So now, really, it's just the S35CA I'm worried about. I have no idea what the view range on the S35CA is in 9.6. So I'm still being very careful, and as I say, I don't have sixth sense, so let's just wait and we'll see if we can spot anything. We'll speed it up till something happens. Oh, and he's advanced down the back of the map. So he's sitting side on, and you can see first shot goes in, second shot goes in. Missed that one, that was a bad shot by me. Can't blame the gun for that one, but we take him out on the fourth attempt. There's kill number 5. So you can see against tier 5s, this tank is fantastic. The armor is decent, although I haven't bounced too many shots. Just 2 shots from the Churchill. But the gun, that's the main reason I'm showing you this replay. The gun is very, very good against tier 5s. You don't need premium ammo. So we're almost capped out, just 2 RT left, move up. 1 quick shot into the 105 AM. Just a Sexton 2 left. And I'm running out of time, only got 1 second left. And I miss a shot in the move. Get 1 more in, and we cap out, unfortunately. So when you're a tier 5 in a tier 6 game, unfortunately your standard ammo will let you down. You do have to fire premium. But when you're in a tier 5 game and you are top tier, the Excelsior is very, very strong. So there was another ace tanker. I also picked up high caliber and a top gun. Finished top on XP with 1118, 1663 damage done, and 6 kills. And as you can see, because I wasn't firing any premium ammo, I earned 47,000 credits. So I suppose for every game you get into a tier 6 game and you have to fire some premium ammo and don't make much profit, there's this game or a game like this where you get into a tier 5 game, don't have to fire any premium ammo, and you make it up in credits. So let's talk about crew. And the crew layout for the Excelsior is actually quite good. You've got a commander, a gunner, a driver, a radio operator, and a loader. So it's pretty balanced. And as you can see, I've got a Carnarvon crew in here. I'm able to train up my full Carnarvon crew in here. But when we take a look at the tech tree, it's not a perfect crew trainer for a couple of reasons. Starting with the Churchill 1. The Churchill 1 basically has 2 gunners and no radio operator, so even though it's another tier 5 British heavy tank, it's not a very good crew trainer for the Churchill 1. However, it gets a little bit easier with the Churchill 7. You can see that the crew layout for the Churchill 7 is identical to the Excelsior, as is the Black Prince, so it fits both the Churchill 7 and the Black Prince perfectly. And then we come down to the Tier 8, Tier 9 and Tier 10 tanks, the Carnarvon, Conqueror and FV215B. It trains up the entire crew perfectly, but you are going to need a radio operator from somewhere else. So as a crew trainer, it's actually quite good. So let's talk about equipment, and thankfully there aren't too many equipment choices, but I've gone for vents on this tank because it helps me in a few areas where the tank is weak. And this tank doesn't have very many weak areas, but its view range is okay at 350. The vents take me up to 366. Now, I play the tank aggressively. I like to play it on the front lines. I like to, even when I'm bottom tier, I like to play it on the front lines and play it aggressively. And their view range doesn't matter so much, but as per usual, choice is up to you. I think vents are a viable choice because it boosts my view range a little bit, it boosts my aim time a little bit, it boosts my traverse speed, my turret traverse speed, my track traverse speed. It's basically just an all-round good piece of equipment. A toolbox is another viable choice for the tank, especially if you've got a new or poor crew in the tank. As you can see, I'm training up basically a repair crew in the tank at the moment, so I don't use a toolbox, but you will find yourself getting tracked a lot in this tank. You'll find that experienced players will try to shoot you right here and right here because you're a British tank, and that will basically track and damage a lot of British tanks, but not the Excelsior. And you don't see too many Excelsiors on the battlefield, so sometimes even experienced players fail to understand where the weak spots are. So a toolbox is a very viable piece of equipment on this tank. You will find yourself getting tracked quite a lot. Heavy spall liner, I think, might be viable. Usually it's the derp guns or arty that gets me when I'm driving an Excelsior, but that's not going to save you from direct hits. One thing that's nice about the Excelsior is it's one of the few tier 5 tanks that can't be one hit killed by a KV2. KV2's penetration is not good enough to go through the front of a Excelsior. In fact, it might even struggle to go through the rear of an Excelsior. It needs to be very, very lucky to hit a weak spot. But likewise, splash damage from RT, I come across a lot of PZ4Hs with derp guns. I tend to take a lot of HE damage, and as a result I take a lot of crew damage. So yeah, a heavy spall liner might be viable. It depends on your experiences in-game. I don't think it's worth 500,000 credits, but it's, as I say, it's really up to your own experience in the tank. Enhanced springs is a complete and utter waste of time and waste of credits on this tank. You don't need to boost the engine suspension by very much. Yes, you do get tracked a lot. Yes, this will give your tracks more hit points, but I don't think it's worth the cost, and I think there are better pieces of equipment. An enhanced gun laying drive is a must for this tank. The tank is quite rapid firing. You're going to get about 16 shots a minute. I think the aim speed of 2.3 seconds is quite slow, so I do recommend an enhanced gun laying drive. Again, if the revert stab's available, I'd go for them, but gun laying drive is what I decided in the end. Coated optics are possibly viable. I don't think so. I mean, I don't like using coated optics on any tank with less than about 380, 390 view range, meters of view range. Coated optics costs a lot. It's going to get you an extra 35 meters of view range. Is it worth 500,000 credits? I don't think so. I think if you want to boost the view range, maybe binocs are better, but again, it's completely up to you and how you decide to play the tank. If you're playing it passively, playing it like a sniper, binocs would be the better option. If you're playing it aggressively and you really do want to boost your view range, then coated optics are perfectly viable. It's just that I don't think you get enough return for coated optics on a tank with less than about 380 meters of view range. Moving on, we've got a medium caliber gun rammer, which I think is a very viable piece of equipment. I'm using it. The tank has 1750 DPM. Stick a gun rammer on there and you get close to about 1900 DPM. It's a very good choice of equipment. I do like how my rapid firing guns, so definitely a gun rammer, and the fact I've got a gun rammer which increases my reload time meant that it was an easy choice to put a gun laying drive on the tank as well, because I really did need to do something about my aim time. A wet ammo rack I don't think is worth it on this tank. Even if the tank gets ammo racked, you're still going to have a pretty decent rate of fire. And a camo net, again, it's a heavy tank. The camo rating on the Excelsior is not very good, so a camo net's going to have less impact than it would maybe on a medium or a light tank. Again, if you're playing on a budget and you've got a toolbox, binocs, and a camo net as the only pieces of equipment to put on, mount and demount, then yeah, go for it. It's not going to hurt the tank, but I think there are much better choices of equipment than a camo net. So yeah, as per usual, my equipment choices are just my opinions. If you decide to play the tank differently, play it more passively, play it more aggressively, then you might decide to go for different equipment options. Okay folks, time for the overview game, a game where I try and show you as many strengths and weaknesses of whatever tank I'm reviewing in one replay. We're here in a tier 5 game on Windstorm. The teams look fairly even, and I'm happy it's a tier 5 game because it means I'm not going to have to fire any premium ammo. Let's just get going.
Show on the road.
Now, during the countdown, I was looking at the enemy team and I was seeing how many medium tanks they had. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 medium tanks and quite a few fast TDs. So basically, I'm going to try and control the middle of the map, because usually medium tanks come to the middle of the map. So usually a lot of heavies will head up to the A-B line, or maybe heavies will head into town. But the Excelsior doesn't really play like a heavy tank. As top tier, yeah, I could play it like a heavy tank, but because there are so many mediums on the enemy team, I want to come into the middle of the map, and I just want to bully the medium tanks that are here. Unfortunately, things don't go the way I want, so I'm getting into position relatively quickly. I'm doing 24 kilometers an hour uphill. As I say, the tank doesn't accelerate particularly well, but it's okay. And as I predicted, a lot of medium tanks have gone north, but there's nothing up here other than M5A1 Stuarts, so we get a shot through the wall, get another shot in, and I've just taken a HE damage from a PC4H. So as I say, most of the damage I usually take in the Excelsior is people firing derp guns. So PC4H has just taken 140 health from me. Thankfully, no crew or module damage, but if you look at the north of the map, we're under pressure. And this is where the Excelsior absolutely shines, because I'm playing like a medium tank. I'm going to be using it to flank. Now, how many heavy tanks can you do this in? The T14 is okay, but it's not, definitely not as maneuverable as the Excelsior is. But I'm able to flank. I'm able to move up, engage tanks from the rear, and get 2 shots into the Wolverine. Can I get him before his gun comes around? There we go. There's kill number 2. RT is now focused on me. So I know there are 2 tanks to my left. I know that there's 1 tank to my right. So again, coming down, staying at an angle coming around this corner. There's a T-34 and 191 millimeters of penetration. And another bounce. He's angled. And I missed that shot. Going for his machine gun port, and a bounce. So I'll go for his side again. We finally pin. He bounces, and we take him out. So now there's a T-25. And because we're angled, the T-25 bounces on the front. And I can charge him down. So I'm staying at an angle, but even though I was staying at an angle, he was able to put a shot through my side. He bounces again. So there's that side armor. The one time he fired at my side, he pens, kills my radio operator, damages a track. But other than that, we bounced 2 shots from him. So I've cleared out the danger in the north. I'm moving forward. I've got 2 PC4Hs in advance, or coming up to support me. But again, you could see the speed. I'm doing my 38 kilometers an hour along here. But the Excelsior is a tank that you can play like a heavy tank, or you can play like a medium tank, depending on the circumstances. In this particular scenario, I'm playing like a medium tank. And I'm hunting down TDs, I'm hunting down RT, and I want to hunt down that PZ4H who put a shot into me earlier. So we've got an AT2 who's holding out in town. I am on a mission at the moment. I'm actually not quite sure why the mission isn't showing up here. But I do have a cap mission for the T-28 heavy tank concept. So I need to cap. But anyway, move forward, finally spot RT. And again, moving forward.
We've damaged them.
Shoot, move. Moving, shoot.
Got him.
And I've just been flanked. So AT2 gets me in the rear. And he's just pumping shots in.
We've lost the track.
So I angle, he tracks. But yeah, he's able to pen me, so I decide, okay, I've got to use my repair kit. So now there's a PZ4H and an AT2. I'm trying to cap to complete the mission. AT2 gets taken out. But you can see that shots into my rear, shots into my side, they all penned. You can see all the shots from the AT2 there. That's the incredibly poor side armor. So I get one shot into the PZ4H, and I'm doing damage. Now, I'm trying to cap, but at the same time I want more out of this game. I'm on 5 kills, and I'm thinking, I can cap, and maybe I can get my Top Gun as well. So, I'm stupid here, I make a mistake.
We didn't even scratch them.
So we bounce, there's a 91mm of penetration, and he derps. So, unfortunately I die. 5 kills and 1600 damage, and yeah, trying to cap for a mission once again, it cost me my life, but I could have hidden behind the rock, but it was a choice of mission or Top Gun, and I decided to go for the Top Gun. I made a mistake, but I'm not perfect. So in that replay, you got to see the maneuverability of the tank. You got to see the engine in action. You got to see me flanking, playing it like a medium tank. You got to see the gun being very, very good. The gun actually hit most of its shots on the move. And you got to see some incredibly poor side armor. The AT2 was able to put pretty much almost every shot into my side. And you also got to see HE damage and modules and crew members taken out. So pretty much all the strengths and weaknesses of the tank in one replay. Okay folks, time to sum up. Is the Excelsior worth 1500 gold or less if you decide to pick it up in a special? Well, I originally bought the Excelsior probably a day or 2 days after it was originally released, and back then I thought it was a fairly average tank with a very, very poor gun. I didn't enjoy playing it very much, and as a consequence I didn't play it very often. I played a handful of games, stuck it in my reserves, and forgot about it. The nice thing about these reviews is I get to sit down and do something I very rarely do, which is play a tank game after game after game, back to back, and basically get to relearn a tank, or learn to hate a tank, or learn to love a tank that I basically had a different opinion of before I sat down to do the review. The Excelsior is one of those tanks where I had a very, very average or even below average view of it before I sat down to do the review, and having had the opportunity to sit down and play 18 games in a row, I've come to actually love the tank. I think it's a very, very good tank. And a lot of it's down to possibly its premium ammo. I'm not a gold spammer, but when the Excelsior was originally introduced, gold ammo was only available for gold. That's why it was called gold ammo. Since then, gold ammo is now available for credits, but when the Excelsior was first introduced, I felt that maybe the tank was one of these tanks that Wargaming put into the game simply to sell gold. Because to make the tank effective, you needed premium ammo, and the only way you could get premium ammo was to spend gold on it. So it really, really felt like one of these tanks that had been put into the game simply to sell gold. I don't spend gold on ammo, so I was only playing it with AP. and I think a lot of people were only playing it with AP back then because they couldn't afford gold, and as a result, yeah, the tank really didn't get the reception it deserved. However, since then, Wargaming have introduced premium ammo for credits, and even though this tank is still at the mercy of the matchmaker, the fact that you can now actually afford to fire premium ammo in this tank makes it a heck of a lot more competitive than when I originally started driving it and was trying to pen tier 6 heavies with 91mm of penetration. So the gun is a lot better than it originally was, simply down to Wargaming changing premium ammo from gold to credits. As a result, I think I enjoy the tank a lot more. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still at the mercy of the matchmaker. If there's a lot of heavily armored tanks on the enemy team, then even the premium ammo can let you down. And firing a lot of premium ammo in this tank really cuts into your profit margins, and you might even find yourself making a loss. However, it makes the tank competitive. And one of the things I do when I'm summing up whether or not a tank is worth it is I try to think of all the strengths and weaknesses of whatever tank I'm reviewing, and this tank has so many strengths. The armor is fantastic. The frontal armor is very good. Yes, there are plenty of tanks that are going to be able to penetrate 114mm of penetration, but there are plenty of tanks that can't. The frontal armor is very good on this tank, and if you know how to angle or side scrape a little bit, then the armor becomes even better. And when this tank is top tier, it's an absolute beast. So it's got a pretty good gun. I mean, it's not an amazing gun, but it's very comparable to all the other tier 5 premium tanks, or tier 5 premium heavy tanks. It's got decent armor, it's fast, it's maneuverable, it's got good traverse speed, it's got good turret traverse speed, the view range is actually okay, it's quite good for tier 5, and the signal range is pretty good as well. There's a lot of strengths for this tank. It gets special matchmaking, so it will never see tier 7s. The gun depression is okay, very good over the side, okay over the front of the tank. It's a pretty good crew trainer. This tank has so many strengths, and then I thought, well, how many weaknesses does this tank actually have? And the gun is a little bit average. I mean, the gun can let you down. 91mm of penetration is not a lot, but at least you've got the premium ammo to back you up when you're having problems with your standard AP. It's not the most accurate of guns, but it's comparable to pretty much all the other tier 5 premium tanks, so the gun is kind of a negative, but I don't think it's as big a negative as I was expecting it to be. I thought the gun actually performed very well for me. The side armor is probably the biggest negative. Even though the side armor on paper is only 31, and effectively it's more like 60mm thanks to the spaced armor. Yeah, the armor is better than it is on paper, but it's still very weak, and I think this is the biggest problem with the Excelsior. When the Excelsior gets outnumbered, when tanks get to the side of the Excelsior, then it can be very difficult to win, and there were quite a few times yesterday where I was zerged and enemy tanks were able to get to my sides. HE causes this tank a lot of problems. Even though the armor is quite good, and HE has a problem penning it, because of the HE splash and the fact you've got 0 armor on your engine deck and 0 armor around the top of your turret, yeah, the HE can cause a lot of module damage, it can cause a lot of crew damage, even if it doesn't penetrate. It's at the mercy of the matchmaker, like so many other premium tanks. Even though it gets special matchmaking, a lot depends on the tanks that are going to be on the enemy team and whether or not you're going to be top tier or mid tier. The tank is amazing when it's top tier, but even in a tier 6 game, I think the Excelsior is a lot better than I remembered. I really did enjoy this tank, and I really can't think of very many negatives. So when I originally sat down to do this review, I thought I would end up giving it a very average review. I thought it was a decent tank with a very below average gun. And I'm pleasantly surprised to inform you guys that my opinion has been changed. I think it's a very good tank. I think it's a tank that is probably a lot better for an experienced player. I think if a player understands weak spots, then they can work around the 91 millimeters of penetration. I think if a player knows how to angle, if a player knows how to side scrape, then they're going to get a lot more out of this tank than maybe an inexperienced or new player would. The tank needs to be played more like a medium tank, especially when you're not top tier. It's one of the few heavy tanks that can be played like a pure medium tank. It's fast enough, it's agile enough to do it, and I really think the Excelsior is a very versatile tank as a result. And just the tank is worth it, guys. It really is. Really surprised I changed my mind on this tank, but I had so much fun playing it yesterday. I think it's just great. But yeah, it's worth it, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.